Did you ever do radio before?
I sure did.
That's what I thought.
So, 300 years ago, when I was starting out in Lansing at the CBS station there, I was their nightside reporter. And as you might imagine, and I know you know how it is, salaries in those markets are really bad. So I became the morning news chick on 92.1, the edge of rock and roll. And I was their morning news chick on their morning show, which meant that I literally got up at like 4, was in the studio by 4:45, did the radio show till like 8 o'clock in the morning, and then went home and napped, and then got back in and went to the station to report at night. And then I worked on the assignment desk at Channel 50 here in Detroit when it was a Fox affiliate on the weekends. So I worked like 7 days a week, 24 hours a day for about 2 years, and nearly gave myself a complete stroke. But
it's funny you mentioned that, because when I first got into radio, I worked for 7 days a week on 2 different stations for 4 months. I finally said something to my boss. I said, I don't want to complain, but I'm working every day of the week. And then he goes, okay, we'll take care of that. 8 months later, he comes up to me like it's his idea and says, you're working every day of the week. I said, yeah, I know. And of course that changed. But I guess that we kind of had the same kind of mindset and the work ethic, don't we?
Oh, it was, I was grateful to be there, okay? And I knew that I had the opportunity. And I guess when you're like, 23, 24, you don't care. Like it's just like, I'm going to go and I'm going to make it happen. And when I look back on that now, I'm like, how did I do this for such an extended period of time? And just was like, well, I guess it's just what you do.
Yep, that's exactly what you do. And then, of course, you did a stint here for a few days on WRIF.
On the Meltdown Morning Zoo.
That's
right. Along with, and God rest his soul, Ron Savage.
Yeah, that's right.
Who, it was such a great guy.
Yeah, super guy. Yeah,
I was listening to you guys on one of the days that I wasn't, hosting with you. And you're like, Mara's going to be filling in a couple days. And Ron, in typical Ron fashion, was like, yeah, questionable sources that way. Questionable sources. He's such a great guy.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, so for people that don't know, when Drew and Mike left and Dave and Chuck came in, I was told like that Thursday or something like, hey, you're going to be doing the morning show for the next week. And I'm like, I am? And it was Jade and myself. Mm-hmm. And so I asked you, but you couldn't do all the days, but you were nice enough to do a couple days. So that was fun.
It was fun, and it was crazy. I mean, radio, I think doing radio earlier in my career made me a better ad-libber, made me more able to think on my feet. And I think it's one of the reasons that I never have a script in front of me, or used to have a script in front of me when I was on TV, because I thought it dragged me down.
So so I didn't know that you didn't have a script. I mean, obviously you're not standing there in front of a teleprompter.
No.
But you just get your sources, you get your story, you kind of put it all together in your head, and then you're ready to go.
Yeah. And I think it comes across better. And I tell this every time I interview somebody, and usually it's somebody in the business community who, maybe works for a publicly traded company or who is worried about how they could be perceived. I always tell them that anytime that I tried to say or put something together that I thought sounded grandiose and fabulous, always came off as stilted and phony. And I was so much better off speaking like I speak and being yourself, other than trying to put on some big put on. People respond to people who are real and genuine, and I think they can smell a put on a mile away.
Right, exactly. A BSer for sure. So 20 years at Channel 4 out here. First of all, I used to watch it and I always say, back out here live.
Back here live.
So did that just, how did that phrase, I mean, it's such an obvious phrase, I suppose. Did someone say, hey, I like that, keep doing it, or how's it work?
It's funny because I never really thought about it. It just was my others are take a walk with me, or let me break it down for you, or let me show you, or back here live. And I never put a conscious thought into it. Yeah. It just sort of evolved. And my former news director, who's now the general manager at the CBS O&O in Miami, when some of the other reporters at the station were starting to pick up some of my catchphrases, she's like, "Hey, you guys got to get your own shtick." I'm like, I never thought of it, but I guess it is my shtick. It was.
But that is a perfect way to come back from a video segment to you.
Well, I think that, I don't know, I guess I thought that people needed to understand the differentiation between what they may have seen taped and live, and know that, I'm really here. I don't know. Maybe I'm a genius, Melton. I just didn't know.
Well, that was my next question. Are you a genius?
Clearly no.
How many stories do you think you did on Local 4?
Oh my God.
Can you estimate?
God. Thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands. And, a 20-year run at one station is very atypical. But DIV was a very atypical station and one of the top NBC affiliates in the country. And I'm from here. This is my home. So I knew when I got here that I was going to dig in for the long haul. And I'm really fortunate that happened.
Well, so you mentioned that you're from here. So let's talk about that, because your parents are both alive.
Yeah, in their 90s, yeah.
Right, in their 90s. How great is it that you had a chance to have them watch you on TV for 2 decades?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And I wish that Nielsen had put, a box in our house, because my mom watched every show I was ever on. My dad, not so much, but my mom, absolutely. Like she'd call me every day around 3:30, and she'd be like, "Honey, you going to be on the earlies today?"
Yeah.
so that she could watch, or when things like, when I had to work overnight because the news was insane. I'd get a call after my last live hit, and she'd be like, "Are you going to be on the morning show?" I'm like, "Are you really going to be tuning in at 4:00 in the morning?" And she's like, "Yes." So that was everything. And I don't know if you saw the article that the Free Press did on my decision to take this buyout.
Yes.
But
you actually texted me about that too.
I cannot thank Julie Hines enough, because in so many ways I wanted that to be a love letter to my mom and dad, and to the coworkers that I had at that station, like my beloved photographer, Eric, that I wanted people to know, that was what was important to me, that it was never just a story, ever, because I'm from here.
Right, exactly. It's funny because I grew up, outside of Buffalo, which is a lot like Detroit.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have finished my career there perhaps, but that's not the way it worked. And my dad said, when I came to Detroit, give it 6 months and see what happens. And here we are.
And here we are. How many? 20 plus 24?
20, it'll be 29 in November.
29?
Yeah, here at Riff, so.
That's a run and a half.
And I've met great people like you and been friends. So what, as far as like other people on other stations, who are some of your friends from other TV stations?
Well, I love Glenda Lewis over at Channel 7 because she and I also happen to work together in Lansing at the same time. And I think Glennie is just one of the best people I know and has one of the biggest hearts. I think Amy Lang over at Channel 2 is not only an excellent reporter, I think she is a quality human being. I really liked Ron Savage. I thought he was such a good guy.
Yeah.
And, so many of the names that people, I think, wouldn't recognize because they're behind the scenes, like the photographers at all the stations are, for the most part, such a really great bunch of people. And, I always got asked, do you guys hate each other? Are you competitive and you hate each other? And the reality is a lot of us have worked together at other stations as we're moving up the TV food chain. And of course I don't hate those people. Now, are there some that I'm not particularly fond of? Sure. But it was never a hate thing. And we see each other often. So there's not any benefit to being a jerk. Ever.
Well, speaking of that, I was watching you and stuff, doing your stories and that. You must have created so many relationships with local fire department, police departments, different things just to get your stories, local politicians and all this stuff. But, like you said, you didn't despise those people that you worked against, but you also had to kind of get in there a little bit and you had to do your job better than they did their job.
Oh, am I competitive? Of course I'm competitive. You can't get into this if you're not in there to win it and to compete. But there's something to being an honorable competitor versus someone who's, is a jackass.
Yeah.
Like, they're yeah. And there are people in this market who would do things like if they got to a scene before maybe we did and talk to somebody would be like, oh, and don't talk to Channel 4 or pull some stunt like that. And I never, ever acted that way. I think that's bad karma.
Yeah, right. Yeah, bad karma. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't act that way.
What were your favorite stories?
Oh, honey, there have been so many over the years. Like, I don't even know where to start.
Like, favorite, like, topiks.
Oh, politics.
Politics, yeah.
Well, let me rephrase that. I used to love covering politics in this state. And to a certain standard, I still do. And I'm certainly, I read all the time and I'm paying attention. But it just seems like we're in this vicious circle where everybody's angry all the time. From both parties. And the vitriol is such that, I have a buddy, I have a lot of buddies who are political consultants / hatchet men. Mm-hmm. And you can get really sucked into this narrow, negative worldview really fast. I don't think it's healthy for anybody at all.
What, obviously you covered like stories of, car crashes and politics stuff. What were some of the funner things you like to cover?
Well, every once in a blue moon, they throw you a bone and they don't send you to something awful, which is nice.
Yeah.
But, we've everything from, one of the last stories I did was on a 99-year-old World War II flyboy that he wanted, we sort of put it together with Masters of the Air to talk about what it was like being a bomber boy in World War II. And he was exceptional. And it's so funny when you talk to the guys of that era, how humble they are. And, this man survived being shot down. This man did 35 bombing runs, and survived it. And just came home and went to U of M and and became an engineer and went to work for Ford and worked on things like the Mustang and the Continental and was just so matter of fact about it all. Like, it's shocking. I loved doing that story. And, I remember the auto show when the auto show used to be something. And, before so many automakers have bailed on it and all this stuff around it. The last big event that GM did was their GM style event that Kid Rock played at. And I had to work an overnight shift for that. I did the 11 o'clock, put stories together. We did live hits for the morning show from the floor. And just the energy and the buzz over something like that it just is a whole different thing than like the daily news grind.
Yeah.
And it is a grind.
Oh, I believe it. And, I just thinking about that because I remember you texted me something. You texted me a question about Kid Rock a few years back, but your phone must have been going nonstop. And when you started in this business, how did you communicate or how did you get stories? And
well, it certainly wasn't on Facebook.
Yeah, right.
Because my first reporting job was in 1994. So there was no Facebook, there was no socials, there was no any of that stuff. And, we had cell phones, but they weren't
Was it
great.
like police scanners?
It was, it's still police scanners. Yeah. But it's so funny you ask this. I was asked by a news director in a smaller market here in Michigan if I would consider going in and consulting their reporters while I figure out what I'm going to do long term now. He said, because they don't know how to develop sources. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to talk to people. And I thought, we're in real trouble, because if you don't have that skill set, then I don't know how you do this. Do you really think that you're just going to copy and paste what you saw on Facebook? That's what?
Yeah, that's interesting. So it might be this social media atmosphere we're in.
Well, I think, Tom Izzo said he thinks it's making us all dumber. And I think he might not be wrong. I don't know. I enjoy it. Listen, I'm on most of it, but I curate my feeds. Anyway, it shocked me that, and that's something that I hear from news directors in smaller markets who, have a limited talent pool to to pick from, because quite frankly, so many people aren't going into this anymore.
Yeah.
Because the hours are terrible. The pay especially is terrible in those early years. And quite frankly, it's trickling down into larger markets like this. And I'm so lucky that I started in this career before there was a Facebook or a Twitter, before there was this vehicle for anonymous people to sit there and spew stuff at you.
Right.
That when you're 24, you don't know how to handle. I wouldn't have known how to handle that. The beauty is I'm not 24 anymore. and I know how to compartmentalize that and put it somewhere else.
Well, there's an old saying, believe half of what you see and none of what you read.
Right.
So
right.
That's the way I kind of approach things myself.
Right. I mean, and that's not to say people can't not like, I mean, if you don't like me, that's fine. Okay. And I'm sure there are many, as my mother's like, oh, honey, that's not true.
That's not true at all.
Like, well, Mom, let me tell you. And I don't mind somebody who emails or would email this station with like a legitimate question or why didn't you ask this, or some sort of criticism that wasn't, I think you're a partisan hag,
right.
and it's signed like Dr. Demento 123. Have the balls to sign your name.
Right.
I'm not anonymous on Twitter. I'm not anonymous on any of these things. I will tell you, I have no respect for that.
Yeah, that's true. So do you get a lot of that? Did you get a lot of that stuff? A lot of emails and that from people critiquing your job?
No, I didn't. Most of the emails I got were really nice, and from people like, I loved your coat. Where'd you get it? or I liked your lipstick. But I did, you do get some hateful stuff, but I'd say out of the mail that I did get, I'd say the hateful stuff was probably less than 5%.
Yeah.
And I knew where to put it. Now, were some of them threatening? Like I had some fool email me and send me copies of like bullseyes with like, you're in the bullseye. And you're like, yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
I remember one time here, apparently I had a phone set up. I didn't realize it, but there was a voicemail. And then I discovered, I can listen. When there was some really nasty messages, we had to get the cops involved. It's like, luckily I didn't even know anything about it, but it was so crazy. It's like, this person's nuts. They're leaving their phone number and stuff.
Yeah, and I think we have all learned in the past couple of years that you can't take any of that stuff that gets really threatening lightly, because people have lost their cool.
Yeah.
And stuff that normally I would have like, yeah. Now you look at it and think, well, I don't know. You don't know, Mel. You just don't.
No, you don't. Yeah, and sometimes you look at it and it's like, it's from a guy who's got like 3 friends on Facebook. I'm just going to delete this one, right?
Yeah, everybody's a critic. When our buyouts got announced, I had a guy walk up to us on the street who's like, you really leaving? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, I just thought you had the easiest job. Yeah. Why would you leave? And my photographer, Eric, just started laughing at him, like laughing until he was crying. And he's like, you have no idea what
I was going to say, yeah, they see you for the 2 or 3 minutes a day and think that's it, right? Oh, I get the same thing. Trust me.
Yeah, money for nothing, checks for free.
Did you get to pick your stories? Or did they?
It depended on the day.
Okay.
Like, we're all a slave to the news cycle. So there are some days when it's just not even a question what you're going to be doing, because and then ideally, what a reporter is supposed to do is have good connections within the community and have people call them and tell them, hey, this is happening, or did you know about this, or did you hear this, or whatever. Which apparently is a dying art, but that ideally is what you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to have a phone that you can. If somebody says, "Oh my God," who can we call? You're supposed to be the one to say, "I got the number. I'll call them right now."
Yeah. So would you be at home and stuff? You get a text message from your higher ups all the time, say, "Hey, this is the story I want you to start to think about," or.
So it would depend on the day. Like I worked in the evenings, but really I worked the minute I woke up, because I was talking to people, texting people, and whatever. And sometimes I got a heads up about what was coming my way, like the Michigan Central concert. I knew I was going to that that night. And, that was already set. But most of the days, no. And oftentimes, you walk in the door and the first thing I do is go over and talk to our managing editor and our executive producer and say, what do you guys need? Am I making an appearance in the early shows today? And I'd say 2 to 3 days out of 5, it was, can you help us out? And then worry about the 11, which, when I first started at DIV, they didn't want you were supposed to be the goddess of the 11, and that's what you had to worry about. And as the business model has shifted, there were fewer people, fewer resources, and you are expected to turn content for streaming, web, multiple shows, which, I like being busy, so that's not a problem for me. And I'm also a really fast writer. Yeah. So that's okay, but that's a struggle. And that's not just DIV. That's everywhere.
This is on the internet.
Yeah, well, I mean...
Somebody's got to write it, and I'm not a fast writer.
Well, let me tell you, it's not just local TV either. I know you're aware of what's going on in the TV landscape, but like cable news is, for all intents and purposes, it has 1.5 feet in the grave because the viewership just isn't there. All of these media companies that have traditionally been broadcast, now I'll say, well, we're streaming companies. That's fine, except they haven't figured out how to monetize it.
Right.
And anyone under 50 typically is getting their news on their phone or on their tablet in quick hits, not watching shows, and they don't know how to monetize that quick hit platform, which is why the revenue for all of these places is severely impacted. CNN just laid off 100 people, like just last week.
Yeah, I think I saw that, yeah.
Warner Brothers Discovery just have rolling layoffs going on because they're having to change the model.
Well, my OnlyFans should kick in every now and then pretty soon here. So,
hey, it's an option.
What have you been doing?
Breathing, actually. I cannot even tell you how stressful this has been. Like, so stressful on so many different levels. I think from the minute they sent out the email that was titled "Exciting, news about your retirement benefits," and it went to like 23 of us, and we're like, oh. To seeing what was being offered, to trying to figure out if you were going to take it, and at the same time, they offered me a new 3-year deal, a nice one, and to leave some of my dear friends in that newsroom, like how do you balance it? I was waking up every day at 4:00 in the morning with tears running down my face. Like it was that heavy of a decision.
But your mom helped you.
My mom laid down the law.
Yeah.
Because I said to her, like in the final 2 days before we had to make a final decision, I looked at her, I'm like, I'm going to do the practical thing and stay at the station. And she looked at me, all 93 years old of her, at 4:10 and was like, get a legal pad out and sit down. She goes, I haven't said anything up until this point. She goes, you've been talking to your accountant and to your financial advisor and yada, blah, 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 blah. She said, you need to really look at your long term, and you need to look at what you think the long-term viability is of the business that you're in, and you need to make some hard choices. And she said, and you should be grateful that you have this opportunity in front of you. And I'm like, but Mom, and she's like, but what? You've been doing this for 30 years, 20 of them at DIV. She's like, I said, yeah, but I always thought I'd die in that newsroom. She's like, well, I think it's about time that you give yourself an option to reimagine what it could be. And when I really did run the numbers, there was no question.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you what you got coming up, but first I just want to know, How big is your closet?
For winter coats or
and hats.
And hats. It's overflowing. But the thing is, people always say, how do you have all this stuff? I'm like, guys, I've been doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like you build a collection over time. And, I just thought about this the other day. You've never seen me wear pattern clothing on TV because every consultant will tell you that you shouldn't wear it because it's distracting and all the rest of it. And I'm like, I could actually buy something that has a pattern on it. Like, who knew?
Maybe go shopping with Mickey Redmond or something. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I'm sure Mickey could style me up pretty well. It just, you know what I've been doing for the last, 2.5 weeks? Sleeping.
Yeah.
And like trying to calm down over everything that's gone on. It's been heavy.
You have irons in the fire.
I have irons in the fire. I have multiple irons in the fire, and I'm trying to figure out what my part 2 looks like. And some of them are in TV.
Yeah.
Some of them are not in TV. And I guess figure out what works out best.
Yeah. Well, outside of that week you did on Riff here the few days, what's been the highlight of your career?
That week at Riff. Truly what the highlight of my career has been is to be able to come home to, I walked into WDIV when Carmen Harlan was the anchor, Chuck Gatica was the weather guy, Emery King was like the 5 o'clock anchor.
Yeah.
That was the A-team, like the A-team, Melt. Mike Lewis was still a reporter here. Bob Bennett was still at the station. They soon left after I came, but to come in to that was exceptional, and it was special. And that I got to experience that, I consider myself very fortunate.
Yeah, that's the same thing here with Riff, man. I've worked with some pretty heavy hitters in my career here.
Sure you have. And I can name them off since I grew up listening to this station.
That's right. And when you were just talking about that, it's like when you were back in college, and that story that was in the Free Press, I can't remember the name. You call someone on voicemail all the time.
Cheryl. Do you remember Cheryl Choden?
Cheryl. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name off the top of my head. That's right.
Cheryl. I love Cheryl. So when I got out of college, I knew I wanted to try this. I didn't know if I was going to be successful, but I at least wanted to try. And I went to Detroit Country Day, and her husband was the dean of the middle school. So I called up Country Day and said, look, can you help me connect with Cheryl Choden over at Channel 7? And they're like, sure. So I call Cheryl, and I'm sure she got calls all the time from kids like me. You're like, I want to be a TV reporter. And she was tired of, being like, ugh, okay, whatever, let me help you with an internship. So Cheryl said to me, okay, I will help you, but you have to call me every day for a month, leave me a voicemail that says, whatever you want to say. So I left her the same voicemail every day for a month.
Which was?
Hi, Mrs. Choden. This is Mara. I am calling to ask for your help in landing an internship for me in television. I would really like to be a reporter. Thank you. I appreciate it. Here's my phone number. So, I called her every bloody day for a month, and she got back to me after my final voicemail and said, we don't have any internships open right now at Channel 7, but one of my dear friends has become the news director over at Channel 50, which was then the Fox affiliate, and called them up. And I went in there for an interview with the assistant news director, who, of course, looked at me. I was like, Mara, why should we hire you? And I looked at him, and as only a college kid with no clue can say, I make things happen. I look at that now. My friends from college cackle. They laugh so hard every time. They're like, because I make things happen. Well, yeah. And then I got my rude awakening. I did have a paid internship, though, which back in those days was like not a thing. You were expected to be a grateful slave and not get paid for anything. But I had a paid internship. And my first day on the job, the assistant news director took me around. I was like, Mara, your only job here is to make sure that the coffee is ready in the morning. And I'm like, okay, like, yes, sir. Well, I didn't question it. Okay. make all the beat checks on the phone, call all the police departments, what's going on, look at all the court docket for the day, what's going on, and just, grist for the mill, man.
Over your career, have you had a chance to interview like celebrities? Like, tell me some of the famous people you've talked to.
Well, I mean, he's not famous to you because he's your pal, but like Kid Rock but mostly, because it's Detroit, it's usually people in the music industry, like a Smokey Robinson or someone like that. And then since we've now become some crazy battleground state, all the presidential candidates and their surrogates who come here, to speak for them. So I guess I have a different viewpoint on interviewing people who are well known.
What do you mean? I don't follow. So
it doesn't excite me. Like, it's the least exciting thing that I do.
Okay. But
because their answers are all canned, very, and their handlers are always fluttering around.
Whenever I interview someone and I feel like the answers are canned, I always kind of blame it on myself. I'm not saying that's you, but it's like, for me, I'm always like, maybe I didn't do a good enough job.
No, it's not you, because all of these people now have handlers who are always telling them that they've got to be on their message or pushing their product or,
I know sometimes you ask something about something over here, and they will somehow find a free way to get over here and start talking about this.
Or they'll just ignore the question completely.
Right.
Like, I am so used to politicians ignoring the question completely. And what are you going to do? Sit there and repeatedly? It is what it is. Like, they've all been schooled not to answer anything that they don't want to answer. And quite frankly, socials have made it easy for them to avoid us altogether and just put something out on Twitter where no one can question it or put any context to it or whatever. So, it's funny. I did Franco PR asked me to come in, and we were talking about how delivering message has changed over the years, and they agreed with me that so many just bypass television news, period, because they just don't want to be asked things like they don't want to answer.
Right.
And one of the guys said, but I still think that it has like more heft to it if a reporter has vetted it and it shows up online or on print or on TV. And I'm like, dude, I don't know that everybody else feels that way anymore. I don't. I think that I think we live in a polarized world.
That's for sure. And I think that a lot of it has to do with, like I said before, believe half what you see and none of what you read, or sometimes hear, because quite frankly, I think a lot of the news media they're just making stuff up. Like there's a lot of stuff that we could go in, not like you guys. I'm talking about like the major news corporations, whether you're on the left or the right. I think there's a lot of stuff that's made up or lied about.
I don't know that I think it's made up. I think that it is presented in a manner that is skewed towards their audience, and I think cable news has made us all dumber. Like, I really do.
Yeah. Because
people don't understand that, or they've somehow missed that what they're watching is opinion versus news. It's all become so cloudy and like mushed together that I think we've, liberals watch MSNBC, conservatives watch Fox. I don't know who's watching CNN anymore, if anybody. I mean, really, their numbers are that in the tank.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if we could all maybe just watch something that could put something in context and not skew it?
Right.
It just doesn't seem to exist anymore.
So only a couple weeks in here, do you miss it?
I miss the people. I miss my photographer, Eric. I miss Megan Gargiola, our executive producer. I miss the people. I don't necessarily miss being in the barrel.
Yeah, in the grind.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like, right before I left, that terrible splash pad shooting happened in Rochester Hills. And I was at a play, I because of my schedule, like, I can't go out at night Monday through Friday. And I'm tired when I come, I'm drained when I come home on Saturday and Sunday. So I'm not out at the bars, rocking and rolling. I had just once decided to go see a friend's play at St. Dunstan's over at Cranbrook. And it's outside theater. Everybody's having like wine and cheese and picnics and watching the show. And my phone is blowing up. And I'm thinking, I'm not on call, but I should probably go in. But I don't want to leave. But
yeah, because that was a weekend, right?
Yeah, it was Saturday.
Yeah.
And, I called the station. I'm like, do you guys need me to go anywhere? And they're like, no, but could you come in tomorrow? Or can you come in? It's going to take me a minute to not immediately look at my phone and go, oh, crap.
Yeah.
And think. I was talking about this. Our director of programming, Ro Coppola, who was the heart and the spine of that station, also took this buyout. And I had her over for dinner last week. And she said to me, all I could think about the day that somebody tried to kill Trump or assassinate Trump was that had we been there, it would have been like, can we get somebody on the ground? How fast can we fly there? Could we drive? Where should we go? How do you move your people around? And she said, it's so weird to not have to be in that barrel and to just breathe for 5 minutes and not worry about everything. Because the joke at our place was, I worry so you don't have to.
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe you'll have to get out and rock and roll and party with me now during the week.
Well, I'm available.
That's right. Got time on your hands.
I'm available. It's so weird to be among a normal person's schedule.
Yeah.
Like people eat dinner at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock and they're home and they're on their way. I've always worked nights there, Mel.
Yeah,
always.
right.
Like, the day I walked in the door, it was 2 to 11 or 2:30 to 11:30 or whatever. And it's like a whole new world has opened up. I was in an interview for a non-TV gig and they're like, well, we're pretty rough here. And I just started laughing. I looked at them and I'm like, people, there's nothing that any of you can possibly do to me that I haven't already been through. And they're like, we hadn't thought about it that way. I'm like, think about it.
You were interviewing for a job here at Riff? That's unbelievable. Well, Mara, thanks so much for coming in, and nothing but the best. And keep us posted as to what you'll be doing in the future. And you're always welcome on my show. And I think you may be the only media person who's on my personal Facebook, and it's my daughter's birthday today. So make sure you give her a like.
Oh, happy birthday to the kiddo!
That's right.
Oh, and I'm honored that I made the cut for the personal Facebook. It's good to know.
All right, Mara. Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Good to see you too, Mel.